Welcome, soul driven writers, to the Soul Writer Podcast. This podcast is designed for writers like you who have a burning desire to share their story and message with the world and make the biggest impact possible. I'm your host, Lauren Eckhart, bestselling author, ghostwriter, book coach, and the CEO of Burning Soul Collective. Here at the Soul Writer Podcast, we believe in the power of vulnerability and authenticity. Our mission is to inspire and empower you to write from the depths of your soul by showcasing other authors who have done exactly that. Through their journeys, you'll discover what it takes to write a book that truly resonates with readers and learn how you can embrace your own unique voice to live the writer's life that you've always imagined. So, gather your favorite writing tools, cozy up in your favorite spot, and let's explore the world of soul-driven writing together. This is the Soul Writer Podcast, where your passion meets purpose and the world awaits the magic that only you can create. Welcome to the journey. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Soul Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Eckhart, and I am just so honored that you are taking the time to listen to this podcast. However it is that you have come about finding us, I am thrilled to now be connected with you because if you know me at all, I don't take that lightly. I really, really believe that we are all here to be connected in the most beautiful ways, especially when we are able to enter this environment where we can open up and be who we truly are, be the most authentic versions of ourselves, and express and share in our vulnerabilities. Y'all, that is so much right there in a nutshell of what I stand for. I have discovered throughout my life that my passion really comes down to helping us all understand our own worth and to be seen and to be heard for who we truly are, not how the world wants to be able to see us, but for who we truly are. And I have bridged that desire, I've bridged that passion with my other passion throughout the years, which has been writing and storytelling and books. And it's been just a beautiful cycle. As I start to tear up, that's something you'll learn quite a bit about me as I get very emotional about these things because our life journeys can just be the most beautiful stories in the world. I mean, even through the hardships and the sadness and anything that we can experience, what I'm constantly in awe of is the human spirit and what we're driven by and our true strength and our resilience that shows up day in and day out. The choices that we make and how they all add up to what happens in our life. Like I am continually in awe of that. And I always have been my entire life. And with that, I've known since I was 6 years old that I wanted to be an author someday. That's always been so clear to me. And it's always been so clear to me that I was given this gift of being able to truly listen to other people, that I was able to be this like safe space for people throughout the years. I mean, even when I was a little girl, I would always be that person that even adults would just come and like share their secrets with. And I would just listen and I would just make sure that they were understood as much as I could understand them at that stage of my life, but at least that they were being heard and seen. I mean, eye contact is another thing that's really important to me when I'm talking to people because I do want them to know that they matter. And so, all of that in a nutshell has led me to where I am today, which is the founder and CEO of Burning Soul Collective. We once were called Burning Soul Press. And what we do is that we really help people turn their life stories into powerful books. We do that through book coaching. We do that through helping them publish. We do that through coaching them on how to get their book into more people's hands. And even though it's been primarily nonfiction that we've worked with throughout the years, we are finally starting to transition a little bit more into fiction because I started off as a fiction author specifically because that was my outlet with my life journeys, being able to take my life experiences, my life stories, and turn them into fictional based stories essentially, like turning the people I would deal with into actual characters in my life. That's always been just my outlet, my way of dealing with my emotions or things in my life, is to turn them into fiction stories. And I think we all need that. And I've really seen that more and more with a lot of our nonfiction authors that we work with. They have that heart too to write fiction because it's another way to turn the things that they're passionate about or the things that they've lived through into stories that can help still inspire and empower other people. But what I've always loved about nonfiction specifically, like memoirs or self help or inspirational books, is when people are able to really peel back those layers of who they are and they reveal them to the masses, to nameless faces that they don't even know who will be reading their book, but they have found the courage to do that because they understand that we are here to connect with each other and to help each other through life in whatever way that can look like. And that is the roundabout way of saying that is also why the Soul Rider podcast was created. Obviously, we do what we do through stories, but there's a lot of people too who they want to hear more. They want to hear behind the scenes and they want to be able to really connect with other writers and understand their thought process. So I want to create a podcast where we can dive into the truth behind the stories, the truth behind the books that were written, and really understand their journeys. Because my guess is more than likely, if you stumbled across this podcast, you have thought about writing your story or writing a book in some way or another. And you're interested. You're interested in the people who have done it because you're curious of what they went through. You want to be able to learn so you can implement new tools, new ideas, and your own strategy of your author career. Y'all, if that's the case, this is going to be the place where you are truly cheered on and supported and encouraged in being exactly who you are, just in author form, because that's what we honor here. And you will learn that if you take any of our trainings or anything that we do through Burning Soul Collective. It's truly all about how do you learn how to do things, but then also make it your own, because this is your life journey as well. And what you want for your authorship is going to be different than anyone else. And so I like to be able to showcase a variety of authors so you can find bits and pieces that you connect with. So if you've ever thought about writing and you don't know where to start, hopefully this podcast can help inspire you on what to do to get started or how to really dig in deep or how to be more courageous in having your true self show up on the pages. Because for me, it's all about writing pieces that truly reflect who you are and that message that you want to be able to leave with the world, that reflection of your time here in this world, because more than likely, the life of the book that you're about to write will outlive you. And that is crazy to think about, but that's why it's so important for us to really know what are those messages, those stories that we want to be able to put out into the world. And what do we want those things to stand for? So, those are some of the topics that we will be exploring throughout the time of the Soul Writer podcast. And then I'm really big into y'all, if there's anything that you want to learn more about, please do not hesitate to reach out to us and say, hey, could you do an episode on this? More than likely, we've worked with some sort of person who has experience too with exactly what you want to know more about. And the way that we do our podcast episodes is by interviewing an author with those experiences. But then I do a follow up episode where we dive into that topic even more so you can continually learn and just become better as an author and more intentional with how you want to spend your time when it comes to writing. So, a little bit more about me so you know who you're listening to throughout this. Like I mentioned, have always wanted to be an author since I was 6 years old, but then let life take over in a lot of different ways. I would write in journals. I would write songs. I would collaborate with musicians and turn my words into songs, which was so cool. I thought I really wanted to do that for a long time. And I had a really cool opportunity in college to go to this prestigious songwriting opportunity. And I was going to be the one who actually wrote the songs for all of the musicians. And I turned it down because I don't think I believed in myself. I was really nervous thinking that I was the only writer in that group. Like I would be writing the songs. It just felt like a lot of pressure. And I let that unfortunately hold me back from a really cool opportunity. The other thing that I let hold me back is that in junior year in high school, I wrote what I thought was an amazing story for my English class. And as they asked for volunteers to come up and read their story, I raised my hand, which was huge for me because I'm an introvert and I did not like getting up in front of the class, especially when it came to sharing something that I felt very strongly and passionate about, which was my writing. It's like, here you go, class, see my heart, see everything. I have poured all of me into this, and now I'm sharing it with you all. Um, all of that being said, that I read my story and the class cried, and I was like, wow, okay, they get it. People understand my writing. They get my story. I mean, it was a very moving time for me until like 2 days later that I got my paper back from the teacher and it was all marked up and red. Like I can close my eyes and I can still see how it was all marked up with red. And there was a big fat C minus on the page. I was an A student, so that C minus was not okay. And not only that, but it was on something that I had poured my heart and my soul into. It ripped me apart. And that was one of the times in my life that I stopped writing for several years, especially in the sense of anyone ever seeing my writing. Like I put my author dreams on the shelf. Have you ever experienced that? Like one of those times when you just feel like, okay, this is great. Like this could be something, only to then get the judgment from others, the criticism on things that really weren't important. Because y'all, this is what I wish I could have told my 16-year-old self at the time. You are an incredible visionary when it comes to stories. You understand people, you understand plots, you know how to tell stories. What you may not be as strong in is grammar. And that's okay because there are these wonderful people called editors who will help make your book as best as it can be. So you don't have to be perfect in all aspects of writing a book. You don't. Let me say that again. You do not have to be perfect in all aspects of writing a book. If you have a good story, tell the good story and then rely on a team of people who can help you perfect it, who can help you improve it. That's what an editor does. An editor can come in and improve your grammar. They can improve the flow of your story. They can just make it all better, especially when you find the right one. That is okay. It doesn't make you any less of an author because you are the one still telling the story. You are the one still writing this whole dang thing. And if you've ever sat down to write a story, you know it's not easy. It's tackling a freaking mountain. That is why people who set out to write stories don't always finish them, or to write books don't always finish them because it's a lot. So the fact that it's on your heart to do it, and the fact that you do it, gosh, don't let anyone else tear you down from that. And I let that hold me back for way too many years. And I have seen from working with many, many people that they all have their own little similar story as my English class that has stopped them. It really murdered their confidence in so many ways that they could actually become an author. And that's not okay. And that's why I want to be able to bring people to you who have had similar situations and experiences and have overcome that to write their books, hoping that if you hear someone's story where you're like, yes, I did that. Like I went through that too. Okay, they overcame it. I can overcome this too. On the flip side, my junior English teacher, which I will not mention her name, um, I had a fifth grade teacher, who I will mention. Her name was Mrs. Hannah. She was one of the first teachers to really see that I could be an author. And I remember her like coming with me to the Young Authors Award programs when I won those. And I would write books for her and about her cat, which was named Ozzy. Um, And she just always encouraged me. And I'm so grateful to have people outside my family who would encourage my writing because it helps. It helps when you have that confirmation from other people. Now, I wish my fifth grade teacher came after my junior English class teacher because maybe my path would have been a little different afterwards. But nonetheless, I eventually found my way back to writing. But it wasn't until I took a long path to get there. And y'all, what finally did it for me is I remember every year, like I would have a birthday and my birthday's in January. So it's almost like New Year's resolutions mixed with another year older. I would always say, okay, this is the year. This is the year that I'm going to become an author. This is the year that I'm going to finish these books. And year after year after year passed. And it wasn't until I had my first baby, which I was in my 30s by this time, had my first boy, and I was like, okay. Like I remember looking into his eyes and thinking, Lauren, this is time. You got to get your act together. You got to start chasing your dreams because that's what you want for him. You want him to believe that he can do anything in this world and nothing can stop him. So how are you going to show him that? Because if you're a parent, you know, you can tell your kid whatever you want, but nothing will actually stick more than them seeing you do things, your actions. And the things that I wanted for him, I wasn't doing in my own life. So I had to change that. Well, it's a lot being a new mom, especially. Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot to get used to in your life. So admittedly for me, even though I did start working on writing again, it wasn't until my second was born on top of that, that I was like, all right, Lauren, there's no more excuses. There's no more excuses. And that was a pretty eye-opening time for me because my second came along and he was not sleeping. Like, I mean, he would sleep at most like maybe 40 minutes at a time, if that. Like to this day, he's still not a great sleeper, but it was brutal. And I also had postpartum, really bad postpartum depression, really, really badly. I believe it even started while I was pregnant with him, which that's a whole nother story. But it went until about 10 or 11 months after I had him. So postpartum depression, not sleeping. There was a time when he was crying hysterically. I couldn't figure out how to calm him down. My 2-year-old at the time was crying hysterically, and then that left me crying hysterically. So it was this triple meltdown moment when everyone's crying. And it was the first time, I don't know where the voice came from, but it was like, Lauren, hey, pay attention to this. These kids, they're acting like this because they are a reflection of that chaos inside of you, the unhappiness inside of you. What are you doing with your life? Who are you? Is this who you are? And the thing about having dreams, y'all, I mean, if you've ever had just this huge dream and you've known it for years, like in my case, it was the majority of my life. What ends up happening when you don't do anything with that is that it grows like a boulder that just rests on your chest, like where you can barely breathe because it is just overtaking you. And it doesn't get lighter. It just gets heavier and heavier and heavier because you know how you're spending your days is not by using the gifts that you were born with. How you're spending your days is not by being who you were made to be. And you know that. But for whatever reason, you're distracting yourself with all of the stuff that doesn't matter. You're trying to be someone else other than who you were made to be. And that weighs on you. It is not a way to live. And the only way to get that boulder off your chest is when you actually start doing the things that you know you were put on this earth to do. And that's exactly what happened to me. Is that after that triple meltdown moment when I realized I was not being who I am, who I was made to be, not doing the things that I was supposed to be doing, not using the gifts that I was given, not living my dreams like I want my boys to be able to live their dreams, to actually put their gifts and their talents to good use. Everything in that moment changed. I was like, nope, no more excuses. This is happening. So despite not sleeping, despite having two very young kids who also were not sleeping well, I ended up writing 5 books in about 9 months. Now, granted, what 2 or 3 of these had already been started over the years. Like one especially I had been working on for well over 10 years by that point. So finally finished that one, finished another one, finished 3 more. Like I was on a roll because I was like, there are no more excuses. And I tell people what happened is that my why finally got big enough. I thought all these years that having a dream to write a book was a big enough why, but clearly not, because it didn't push me to actually finish these books. Even with having all of these ideas, I still just did not finish these books. But it took my love for my boys and what I want for them for these books to finally get written in the worst possible situation of my life. When I was depressed with postpartum depression, where I wasn't sleeping, where it just felt like there's a lot on my plate, there's a lot of overwhelm, and I still dedicated, committed myself to writing these books because I wanted it more than I had ever wanted it before in my life. So that's why I always ask people, I'm going to ask you, how badly do you want it? Maybe it's not even writing a book for you. Maybe it's something else. How badly do you want this stream? Because you have to want it more than a lot of those other things in your life right now, a lot of the other choices that you're making. You have to be able to move it as a priority. And in the next episode of my interview with Jennifer Hobbs, we talk about this a lot more. So be sure to pay attention to that episode. That's episode 2 of this first season. The other thing I want to bring up is that by waiting, I missed a very big popular time for the first book genre that I wrote in, which was young adult dystopian. And it's painful, and it's been such a big lesson because I had this genius idea for this dystopian book because I grew up loving dystopian books. Like The Giver was my number 1 favorite book. I would read it year after year after year. And so I was inspired by that. And I will not even deny that my Remedy Files books are inspired by The Giver. Yes, 1,000% they're inspired by that. But what ended up happening is that I had this idea for this book years before The Hunger Games came out, years before, what are the other ones, like Divergent. All of the, there's this period where all of these young adult dystopian books came out. And my idea for the Remedy Files was before any of these other books came out. And so I missed this window. And I want to talk about that for a moment because I really truly believe that we are all given, not all of us, but all of us who are probably listening to this are given these ideas for a reason, these book ideas for a reason. And I call it, it's my golden butterfly theory. And it's like this golden butterfly comes and it lands on your shoulder and it says, hey, you, this is a really good book idea that only you can write. And why only you? It's because it takes your voice, your experiences, your perspective, your feelings, your emotions, your life journey, everything that you've experienced, all of that wrapped together to be able to write this book idea. Like by you writing it, you're going to reach all of these people who need to hear the message, the story within it. So, hey, write it, okay? So that's the golden butterfly talking. Well, what happens then when you don't write it and you keep putting it off, you keep putting it off, you keep putting it off? Like I said, the first book of the Remedy Files was started like 11 years before it was published. It just kept sitting there despite this golden butterfly. And I really believe that what happens, because your book isn't just about you as the writer, right? Like if it was just about you, it would be a journal entry. This is about other people too. The other people who get to read it, the other people who get to have a life-changing event, situation, even if it's just minor, like that little bit of encouragement, that seed that you plant in them, or maybe it's even more life-changing by reading your book. Your book is about all of those other people who need to read it as well, for whatever reason they need to read it. So you can't just have this idea that you don't do anything with. what's going to happen is that golden butterfly is going to be like, okay, well, you're not acting on this, so I'm going to go take this and move it to someone else. And I truly believe that because it needs someone else to write it if you're not going to write it. But it does give you the opportunity. It's just up to you to seize it. And so what ended up happening was Serenity Files finally came out, which I was so excited to write it because I finally had a why. And I'm so excited for my boys to this day. I mean, they're still too young to read it, but to this day, I'm like, yay, someday they'll get to read it. Then when the book actually came out, I remember there were a couple of reviews that compared it to these other books that I had never even read before, didn't even know that they existed. But it's because I had missed the window where it was this like massive young adult dystopian period, right? And it was such a learning lesson for me where I was like, holy cow, if I actually wrote this book when the idea first came, it probably would have hit right in that perfect time. And it came to me for a reason. Like more than anything, I want to honor that. It came to me for a reason in the time that it did. It's my error that I didn't follow up with that when I should have, because it could have been like my big, my big one, right? Who knows? But I still think back to that because it was ahead of its time when it was really just a time when a lot of these ideas were getting generated as is. So I share that because you don't want to have those same regrets that I've had, y'all. And I will tell you that is what much of my advice throughout this podcast will be about are the mistakes that I've made and also the wins that I've had, but also the mistakes of my clients and the wins that they've had. Like I want you to be able to learn from that so you don't have to make the same mistakes that I have so that you can truly learn from my experiences because gosh, what I mean, it's one thing for me to learn from my experiences, and I'm grateful for that, but it's so much more powerful when you're able to share those with other people. Hence the reason why writing in general is so darn powerful. So I'll talk about lots of my experiences throughout this podcast as well, and being very vulnerable and honest with a lot of the mistakes that I've made that aren't easy to share always, but it is what it is, and it's part of my author journey and my career with now being able to help so many other people who write powerful books. And I'm so grateful for that. So, you are in for a ride. I hope you enjoy this. I would love to hear from you and to hear about which authors' stories that you really connected with and why. Because y'all, that lights me up. Like I said in the beginning, I'm just so grateful to now be connected with you. And I hope someday that I will be able to hear from you and hear what impacted you, what inspired you, what empowered you, as I hope that this podcast is able to do. Because if you're here thinking, I want to write something, I want to write something powerful, gosh, I hope that we're able to give you the tools, the strategies, and above all, the encouragement to finally do that. Thank you for joining me on this podcast adventure. Thank you so much for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Soul Writer Podcast. I hope today's conversation has ignited a newfound passion and determination in you to write from a place of vulnerability, authenticity, and soul. Remember, your story has the power to make a significant impact in the world. And by sharing your unique voice, you're contributing to the tapestry of human experience. So go forth, embrace your soul-driven purpose, and let your words transform the lives of your readers. Be sure to subscribe to the Soul Writer Podcast so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we'll continue to share valuable insights and inspiring stories from fellow authors. You can also join our community on social media to connect with like-minded writers and share your own journey by looking at Burning Soul Collective. Until next time, keep shining your light, and remember, your story matters. Your words have power, and the world needs the magic that only you can create. This is the Soul Writer Podcast, signing off for now. Right on, my friends.